Hi everybody, welcome to the Pipe Up podcast. I'm Jacey Normand. I'm joined by my co-host Jamie Jones-Buchanan, and our very special guest today is Chris Brindley, who I'll introduce you to in just a few moments. Now, do you dread the thought of speaking in public? Does it fill you with horror? Would you do anything to get away with it? If the answer to that question is yes, then you are in the right place, because this podcast is all about improving our communication through the power of speech, using storytelling to connect to audiences and to become more confident in the art of public speaking. And today's guest is no exception. He is a phenomenal speaker and a prominent business leader. Chris Brindley is very well known as being the chair of the Rugby League World Cup back in 2021. He was once in charge of the Metro Bank. He has been voted as Britain's best boss, non-executive director of the year, and he's known for his role in transforming many of the organisations he has worked within, which include NatWest, British Gas and the Premier League. Welcome, Chris Brindley, MBE.
Oh, thank you very much. Great to be here with two people I regard as friends as well as colleagues.
Britain's best boss there. I mean, you're a humble guy, but having that in your back pocket now and again but that's a nice accolade to have.
I think it was a reflection of the team that I was part of at the time. That, you know, they put me forward for it. It was a long time ago, so I tend to let things like that pass on. I don't do anything for awards. I do it because it's the right thing to do. I think it's to make a positive difference to people's lives, and you know that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to be the most outstanding workplace. We wanted people to want to join us. We wanted people to stay. We wanted people to enjoy being in the workplace. I think I did a calculation. You spend more time at work than you do waking hours at home.
Wow.
If you think about the travel, the 8 hours and stuff like that. So we started to talk about how do you make the workplace as vibrant, as fun, as exciting as you would want your home life to be. And little things we talked about. I remember doing a visit, an undercover boss visit before I joined. And it was June, sports day was going on, and the person who was serving on the counter had a child at sports day that afternoon, but her manager wouldn't let her go to sports day. I just said, I can't be right. And, I intervened on the day. And I also then went back and recorded a video and said, look, if you're a parent of young children, I think you should be able to go to sports days and nativity plays. And if you've not got children, but you've got interests and hobbies, I just want you to be able to take the time without having to book a full day's leave and stuff like that. It was all about flexibility. And you know what? Some of the managers wrote to me and said, Chris, do you realise how hard this could be? And this was June. I said, well, let me make a prediction. I think nativity plays this year are going to be in December. And so if we've got 6 months to plan for it, actually, I think we're all right. And if there's enough of you and you've got a real team spirit, you'll make it work in every different branch that you've got. So it's not rocket science. For me, it's just doing the right thing by your people. That's leadership.
But you must have next level communication skills in order to be able to put those plans into action.
I think you've got to tell stories. I think you've got to talk about what it means to people. And if I look at sports day, I've got 2 children. I never missed a sports day. You've got to lead by example, right? And I know that when sports day was just about to start, I knew my 2 looked up and I knew what they were looking for. They were looking for me in the lane and maybe the nana, right? Just are they there? And I think you don't get many goes. And that's what we were talking about. Primary school, you don't get many goes at sports days. You might get 5 or 6. So why would you want a 100% record? And the funny story is, I never missed a primary school one. And when Sam, my son, went to high school, I found out it was his sports day and I turned up. Well, it didn't go down well. Because suddenly it wasn't primary school anymore, right? It's high school and he's going... and I'm going, come and support you. Oh, not cool. Mum and Dad being at sports day in secondary school, right? So we talked about, you've only got 5 or 6 opportunities. Sure. Why haven't you maximise those? And you got 5 or 6 nativity plays, 5 or 6 sports days. Right, come on. Let's commit to getting you to 100% of those. And that showed I cared. It showed that I was prepared to be flexible. But I also knew that there'd be days where I needed people to be flexible for our business. And full enough, if you demonstrate leadership first, often people will follow. They'll look at behaviours and they'll copy behaviours. They'll copy your good ones, but guess what? If you're not a good leader and you're incongruent, will copy those as well and think that's the way we do things around here. So I think the leader sets standards as well. And just the communication is just thinking about what do I want the message to be received as? A caring message, an understanding message, a simple message. It's about sports days. I'd like you to be there. They usually take place at 3:00. If we were a bank and we were shutting at 3:30, 4:00, well, it's only an hour. Come on. An hour that you'll give me back multiple times over the course of a career. So it's just having a really good, open, adult conversation about what matters.
So what kind of atmosphere has there been in organisations that you have been in charge of? Because quite often there can be a hierarchical structure in companies and there is a big divide between the leader, that feeling of us and them.
Yeah.
And you've just mentioned that you like to be a storyteller and bring those stories in. And I think that's just an absolutely perfect way of breaking down that barrier. Would you agree with that? And is that something that you've done?
Look, I think leadership is about being visible and accessible. So I remember I became the managing director of NatWest for the North Region in Scotland. And somebody asked me what I wanted on my business cards. And I just went, Chris Brindley. And they went, what about your title? I went, titles are external, not internal. I went, I'm Chris, I'm part of the team. I've got a role to play, but I'm Chris. And people couldn't get over the fact that I'd taken a title which others had desperately scratched the walls to climb the pole to get to. And I gone, it's not about titles. I'm Chris, just part of the team. And that's all I ever want to be. I'm a parent, right? I'm a husband. I like my football, I like my rugby, I like my sport, I like my music, I like my art, I like reading newspapers. We're all the same. So I don't believe in hierarchy, because ultimately the very best teams don't sit there and go, I'm this, I'm that. We're in it together. You know, and look at you, JJB, and the great Leeds teams, you know, the Rhinos team, that, you know, grand final after grand final. And I look at the camaraderie, and I look at the care and the love, and it wasn't based on hierarchy. It wasn't based on how many person who got how many caps to wear. It was, in the moment, we're just in this together. Let's all make sure we come through it together. I think that's leadership. And you've got to keep reinforcing the messages, the standards that you want, the belief that you have for that team. There's a guy called Humphrey Walters, and he helped Sir Clive Woodward right at the outset of the 2003 World Rugby Union World Cup team. He talks about three things. He said all great teams have a cause, and they wake up every morning going, this is our cause. And I'm from Manchester, and I talk a lot about causes. Humphrey Walters said the easiest definition of a cause is people might fight for a right, but you're prepared to die for a cause. And if I take you to St. Peter's Square in Manchester, it's where the Peterloo riots took place. And people lost their lives because they had a cause, and that cause was workers' rights. And as a worker, you know, I do want rights. I do want to be treated well by my employers and stuff. And it's quite topical at the moment with the current government talking about making employees' rights even better. Also in St. Peter's Square is a cenotaph. You know, I pay homage to people who gave their life, right, so we can sit and have a chat, as we are doing today, with freedom. Also, there's a statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. You know, Emily Davidson, who was part of the suffragette movement, gave her life up by jumping in front of the King's horse. Why? Because she had a cause, and that cause was alongside Emmeline Pankhurst, and the suffragettes was about women's rights. So I always try and get people to go, what's our cause?
Yep.
How do we make people's lives better? The second thing he said was pride in the badge. I'm really passionate about, you know, what that badge means to you. And I see some great examples. At Metrobank, we asked people to wear a little red end pin. And it was about pride in the badge. It was about, don't take it off when you're going to catch your bus or the train or the tube. Actually, wear it with pride. Be proud to talk about what it is, what our cause is. I've also seen it the other way. You know, I sometimes get buses and trains, and I listen to two people from the same organisation talking. And you know what they're doing? They're slagging off the boss and slagging off the company that they work for. Yeah, there's probably somebody in their team that's doing marketing, trying to get me as a customer to spend more money with them. And all they've done is they've got no pride in the badge. And I don't mind if people say it's not right, but give your boss the chance to fix it. Don't just sit there on public transport and say it. And the third one, he talks about how do you behave as a team. What's your team code? I'm a great believer in having a team code, right? Turning up, you know, at the right place at the right time with the right kit and the right mind. You know, talk about having fun. right? Take our work seriously. Well, let's not take ourselves too seriously, right? We can enjoy the ride, and there'll be days where it's tough, but there'll be days when you win, and you'll know that more than most, right? They're the special days, and you realise that everything you put into that was worth it. So I think it is about repeat, and just make sure that the standards you follow up to make sure that all the time people are doing the best they can do, be the best versions of themselves when they turn up, either at work or at home. And Damien Hughes does a great story about going home. He says, drive around the block twice before you park up and calm down. Take your bag
Decompress.
and your phone and put it in the boot before you go to the door. He says, because too many people have a young child at home that are waiting for mummy or daddy to come home, and the door's open. Mummy or daddy have got a phone in a bag, and they almost ignore the child, smile, and carry on. Eventually, if that happens, the child will just stop coming to the door. So what you should do for a young child, in my opinion, I've done this well with my two, is drive around the block, decompress, throw the bag in the boot, throw the phone in the boot with it, and then as they approach the door, and as it opens, I just do that. And that is what I think communication. Don't have to say a word to her. What does that mean?
Yeah.
It means I love you. I want you to run at me. I want you to hug, right? Because I love you and I want you to love me. That's communication. Sometimes you don't need to say a word.
The open arms of Chris Brindley and a clear, defined set of values, wearing the badge with pride. I guess they're things that you probably identify with as well, Jamie.
I'm listening to that, and even in just a short space of time, unpicking everything that you've just said there. So I get asked to speak a fair bit about that success I experienced as a player. I always talk about Kevin Sinfield being the vision, the shining light of those values and behaviours as the greatest cultural architect and leader that I experienced in my sporting journey. And I do this talk, and the shorter version is ABC. The A stands for altruism, the selfless concern for the well-being of others. You've used the word care, you've used the word love, and then put that side of congruent in that you live in them consistently, no matter what the environmental conditions are. And that's ultimately becomes our values, and those values are almost like the fence posts that keep us on the narrow path to salvation, and the salvation is wherever it is you want to go, destination, your vision. So my question, I guess, is everybody's a little bit different. Everybody wants different things out of life. How important is it for somebody to sit down and really evaluate what their values are in life and make sure that they're consistent in living them out?
I think you have to have a personal purpose.
Yeah.
And therefore, for me, it's really, really important. My father left home when I was 3 months old. He left me, my mother, my brother. And in the 60s, being a single mother of 2 kids, social worker territory. And I didn't have a father figure, but I had a wonderful mother. We had no money. It was a council flat in Manchester. Whilst my mum couldn't give me money, what she gave me was life lessons. And she sat me down really early on and talked to me about values. Now, I don't think she quite used the word value. I don't think that was the language in the 60s. What she was doing was, talking to me about emotional intelligence, which Dan Goleman then invented, in inverted commas, years later. And great, he gave a label or a model to it. And it was, always be kind to others. So she was talking to me about being a servant leader. One of the things she always asked me to do, I was a pretty fast runner as a kid. And she said, when I ask you to go to the shops, will you do me a favour? Will you knock on Mrs. Howe's door, Mrs. Law's door, Mrs. Fanning's door? Because they're old ladies, and you'll probably be back from the shops before they can get the coat on. So what I want you to do, because you're fast and you're going to run, is to just see if they want any bits. And that was a regular thing for me. And my mum would just say that, well done, you're just helping others, right? And they'll be really grateful, because that's an hour that they haven't get the coat on, walk to the co-op, walk back from the co-op. Mrs. Fanning had a stick, so you're taking all that away from her. So she sat me down and talked about being polite, always saying please and thank you. All of that was around the value set. As I then moved into the corporate career, I wanted to create something that would be consistent, that congruence piece Jamie had talked about. And I've got my own mission statement. And it's to consistently deliver outstanding results and develop winners in life. I want to be consistent in my performance and my behaviours. I ask people, have you ever been in the workplace when your boss walks in, you don't know whether you're going to be kissed or kicked? See, that's a pretty awful place to be. that when this person walks through the door, and I had a stepfather like that. So I know how it feels. So I wanted to be consistent in behaviours, consistent in my performance. I wanted to have a reputation for delivery. I sit in some meetings, people don't have to talk a lot of shit. And you sort of know they're talking shit. And you sort of know they're not going to deliver. They're just talking it. And there's a great Latin phrase called acta non verba, which is actions, not words. And I'm a great believer in action. So I wanted a reputation for delivery. Outstanding's a choice. I don't think it takes a lot of practice to be mediocre. And I've been in some outstanding teams, whether that's sports teams, not at your level, Jamie, but teams where when I sit in the changing room, I'm so proud to be in that team. Just you look and go, wow, this is outstanding. And I know we're going to win. And even better, the opponents in the other dressing room, they know we're going to win as well. So we're beating them before we actually go out on the field. But I've been in some boardrooms, like the Rugby League World Cup 2021. You know, we had to sit there and make a decision when Australia and New Zealand pulled out, both men's and women's, number 1 and 2 teams in the world. We had to make a decision about whether we postpone or cancel. And I'm looking around this board and I'm going, the most outstanding set of people I've ever worked with, led by, you know, an outstanding CEO in John Dutton. And you sort of know you're going to make the right decision. So being around outstanding people is special. I look at when you finished, Jamie, and I looked at the Leeds team, and several of you finished at the same time. And it wasn't, I didn't think it was the talent that had to be replaced. It was the leadership, on-field leadership, that wasn't replaced. Yep. And it wasn't, and you know, you just look and go, wow, that's not just pure talent, that's something extra and goes above it. So I think outstanding. And last bit, results. I realised at school I was going to get marked in exams and stuff like that. I realised at work I was going to be given a letter or a number and that was going to define my performance. So I embrace results. I don't run away from them. So that's my outcome statement. How do I want to behave? I want to develop winners in life. I love being a coach. Every leader should change the name from being a leader to being a coach. Just make people reinforce what they do well. Help them get better. Listen to them when they've got moments of lacking of confidence or motivation. Find out why that is. Listen, do what you can to support them. Give them some of that self-belief back. So I'll talk about winners in life. And then there's 3 pictures underneath that. There's somebody crossing the finishing line first. I like to win. I am competitive, right? But I like to win in style. I think winning's great because what it does, it can set a standard for others to follow. So you can make industries better just by winning. And that's why I talk to our teams about awards nights were great because you got dressed up and you recognise that you benchmark yourself against the very best. Then to win it, I sort of knew that everybody else in that category would go, want to beat them next year. And I go, good. That means I've got to get better then. So I'm going to get better. When you think you've got to where I am, I want to be better. And I talk about myself being positively dissatisfied. That means I'm really positive where we are, but I always slip away from the party early and go, how could we do it even better? So marginal gains and stuff like that.
Yeah, not resting on your laurels. No. And you are an energizer as a communicator. That's one of the things that I always take from you. You are a person that lifts people up. And I was reading something recently about saying the best communicators, that people gravitate towards them because they are generous with their energy. Is that something that you identify with? And do you know, are you aware that you do that?
Look, many people say that, and I do pride myself on having energy. When we talk about leadership and communication, Jack Welch for me is a great role model. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric, and he's got that leadership skill of simplifying things. So I always look to people like Jack Welch. How do you simplify it? Jack Welch said one of the easy checklists for a leader is number 1: have you got any personal energy? He says, because funnily enough, you've got a bit of personal energy. People want to see what's going on and they might listen to you. They might be a bit curious and nosy. He said the second bit is the ability to energise others, because you do want to create a movement. You do want to create something being done. And the more people that help you do that, funnily enough, many hands make light work type stuff. The third one, he said, is excellence. And I talked earlier about those pictures. My second picture is 3 arrows and a bullseye. Not 1, 3. Why? Because I want to be excellent at it. And that Jack Welch talks about excellence. Then the fourth one is edge. And he says occasionally you need to look at somebody and demonstrate you've got edge when their performance is impacting them, their families, the team or the organisation. He says that isn't swearing, that isn't shouting, screaming, expletives. That's just looking at somebody saying, can you please stop?
Yeah.
Can we please have a conversation about what I've just seen or what I've just experienced or what I've just felt? I need to give you feedback because it's a gift. So Jack Welch talks about those 4 E's. And my last picture, to get back to that, is somebody at the top of a mountain helping somebody else up. That's the most important picture in my life. Because I think that's what my mum taught me about why I'm on this earth, to help others.
There's a skill in there that you can crystallise it down into gold. Every word that's coming out of your mouth is of value. It's condensed right down, isn't it? It's like one of those gels that you have on a marathon to give you a boost, keep going, you're full of energy. And that framework is a skill in itself to be able to understand through reflection who you are and how you're going to communicate that to people through storytelling or 1, 2, 3s, however it be. A lot of people out there would 110% agree with what you're saying and would want to emulate that, but don't always have the courage or boldness to stand in front of a room with confidence and speak. We can all be like children. When that gets us, sweat starts pouring, the spotlight's on us. And one example I had recently, I was at a stakeholder meeting of a big firm in middle of Leeds, and they introduced a speaker, they introduced the event, went through the itinerary and the running order, and then they says, right, we're going to give everybody in the room an opportunity to just explain where you're from, your origin story, as much or as little as you want. And then they pointed a finger at this individual who had no choice. He had to start then and start speaking. But then you could see others who were about 6 or 7 in pecking order, scurrying around, running into each other. Like 5-year-olds when Ronnie Rhino walks into the classroom and all half screaming or half running towards him. And 2 of them left. And I'm thinking, they're not busy, they just don't want to speak.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for anybody to start on that journey of being able to communicate who they are and what their origin story is?
Well, first of all, let me just build on what you've just said, and then I will answer the question. There's a study come out of America that said public speaking is the majority of Americans' biggest fear.
Yes.
Spiders is number 2, death's number 3. If you think about that, people would rather die than speak in public.
Yeah, it was something like 65% of the world's population have a fear of public speaking.
So let me talk to people perhaps who are watching this for how do I have the level of confidence. My first ever speech, the big boss, and the big boss was at the back of the room. I was quite low in my career, and everybody looked up to him. And he walked over to me, and his words were, well read. And that was a compliment. And actually, it's funny how those moments, you can either just let it destroy you for life, or you turn around and go, right, I am now going to take control of this situation. So I then started to go, right, I'm going to present without notes. Right, I want to be able to tell stories. And he meant well, but it motivated me to be better. So number 1, we all start our journey somewhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're a poor presenter if you've had a poor one performance. So I talk a lot about, what reflection do we do? Who's good at what you want to do? Go have a coffee with them. Go meet them. Go talk. Go learn. Go learn from the very best. And I became obsessed about going to conferences. And not only did I sit in the audience and make me notes, even now, I always go to those presenters who've really, really given me something. And I go and wait and I talk to them. Number 1, I say thank you. I say thank you so much. Right, I've made some notes. Any chance of you either explaining something, or could I connect on LinkedIn? Could we go for a coffee or a green tea in my case? Because I'd love to learn more. You know what? People want to help because somebody somewhere in their career has helped them. So that whole bit about how do you pay forward. So for me, it is about learning. Jacey, I love watching you professionally. And I recommend people watch you professionally in terms of communication, in terms of presenting. So there are books on presentation skills. There are people like yourself that can act as a coach or a mentor. My best learning on communication was when I was asked to go and do a press course, because there might be one day that I was asked, might have to go and speak to the press. And actually the stuff they taught me there was nothing to do with PR and press. It was all to do with communication. I'll never forget, John Robertson, the tutor in this particular section, said, I want you to write down a statement It's got to be in 55 words, not 54, not 56, 55. And he said, and what I want you to be able to do in those 55 words is tell a story. And you sit there, and Jamie, you just said, kindly, and I was able to simplify it. Trust me, when you've been taught to write the things that matter down in 55 words, not 54, not 56, guess what? You really understand the power of words.
Yes.
He also then asked me what newspaper I read at the time. And I told him, and he went, what do you recognise in all of the newspapers in terms of communication? And he got me to think differently. He said, number one, it usually has a good headline. So when you're communicating, what's your headline? Because I've seen people buy newspapers based on what the headline says. So he said, make sure that if you want to grab attention, make sure you have a good headline. He said, secondly, make sure you've got a really good picture alongside it. Because your best stories have a good picture. And the picture tells 1,000 words, right? So you go, right, okay. Then the third bit is your first paragraph. He said, your first paragraph should tell the story, but inspire people to want to read the rest of the article. He said, and that's how you should structure your presentations. So what's your headline? Put in a couple of pictures and let people remember the picture. Because if you get into neuro-linguistic programming, which I'd also recommend for people who want to be better at communication, your audience is usually split between people who are audio, hear the words, people who are visual and want pictures, and then people who are kinesthetic. And they're the ones that they want the story. They want the emotion. You go, oh, come on, I want to go and do this. So, and then again, he was just really getting to say, communication and presenting, it's actually a learned skill.
Yes.
Because I couldn't speak a word when I was born. So I couldn't have been born with the gift. I must have learned from others along the way. Plus, I've got a high level of motivation that I like coaching, I like talking, I like seeing people be better at who they are and what they do. So as a result of that, I'm motivated to learn and do more. I'm 60 now, and I'm still learning every day.
You said that because you wanted us to say, you're not 60.
No, I am.
You're not.
No, I am. And you know what? And I'm still learning. Because if people say, what lessons can you pass on? It's never stop learning. The world's always changing.
Yeah.
So why would you ever stop learning? So I'm obsessed with learning.
It fascinates me a lot of the stuff you just said there, because it is really what working in TV news is all about, having that headline, being able to simplify a story. And sometimes on news, we'll tell a story in less than a minute, and being able to absolutely, in a sentence, almost define what it is that you're trying to say. And that was one of my questions actually was going to be, do you always have that clear, defined message when you have to communicate with a team or an audience?
Yes is the answer. And it goes back to, what's your headline? What's the picture? What's your first paragraph mentality? Because people will buy that early message. If it's crap, they'll switch off. I had a boss once, right? Couldn't believe it. He stood up, new to the job. He had a piece of paper, right? There's 200 people in the room, and he went, we need to be better at customer service. I'm sat in the back going, boss, we got a problem. If you have to read that, we have a problem. But it was incongruent. And I went, he had to read that we need better. We're a customer-facing organisation. I'm going, oh, hold on. Now, I went up to him and said, were you nervous? He went, oh, yeah, really nervous. I said, sometimes just going, we need a better customer service. Let me give you some examples. And part of that is your preparation and rehearsal. That
was a big question that I wanted to talk to you about, because whenever you speak, it seems like it's just so natural, almost like it just trips off the end of your tongue. But have you rehearsed and practiced those messages long and hard before you speak to people?
I think, first of all, working out what message you want to do. And I don't just sit in a dark room. I'm a great believer that get the audience involved in the message. What do you want to hear? If you're the audience, my job isn't to tell you how clever I am. It's about, what do you want to hear? What are the messages you want to hear? How can I give you confidence, comfort, whatever it is you want? Talk to me. So I often get people to help me craft the message. I think that's really important. And craft the outcomes. Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. Always work out what you want people to do, think, feel, say when they're leaving after you've presented. Because that will be, for me, a judge. If they're going to do something, my message has landed. If they sit there and they don't make any notes and they do nothing after it, I've failed. So therefore it's on me. Nitin Sanghavi was a professor, lives in Leeds, was a professor at Manchester Business School, and he did retail education. And his guidance to me when I was preparing a presentation was 10 hours of prep for 1 hour of delivery. Never forgotten that.
Wow.
Never.
It's an awful lot of energy. That's an awesome amount of energy.
But if you want the outcome to be the best outcome, then the minute you start cutting corners, right, you'll know in sport.
Yeah, sure.
You start cutting corners, you don't win trophies.
Yeah.
Right? No compromise. You have to put it in to get what you want out. And it's no different whether you're playing sport or you're presenting for me.
I'd love to be where you are when I'm 60. I'm thinking I've got 16 maybe years to learn. The skills acquisition are over that side of the room. But I guess in my mind there, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if I'm going to put 10 hours of prep in, what's the best prep to do for me to get that out? Because it's all right being 100 miles an hour. If I'm going in the wrong direction, I'm going to be way off course. You mentioned there 60. I think it was Ernest Hemingway said it takes us 3 years to learn how to speak and 60 years to learn how to be quiet. And I'd just flip that round to learn how to listen. You mentioned there you went to conferences, you listened intently, then you asked questions. There was a guy called Julian Treasure online there, does a lot of TED Talks, and it's about 50 odd million views for his TED Talk on how to speak, but there's only a third of that people that have tuned in and listened to on how to listen. So I wondered if you might be able to give us a bit of an insight into the importance of listening and what active listening actually means.
First of all, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that's the old saying. So let's use that in the right proportions. When I talk to people, the feedback I could get is they'd always prefer a good listening to rather than a good talking to. And that goes back to the active listening bit. Because I'm naturally energetic and I'm naturally curious, I can talk a lot, but actually I do listen. And I listen with intent because I believe eye contact's really important when I'm listening. I've had bosses that when I've walked in and I wanted to talk to them about something really important, they'll be sat on the computer like this. Yeah, I'm listening. And I'm going, no, you're not. No, you're not. So it means, and look, and I see people at home do it. I see people at home, I'm listening, and they're not. They're watching the telly. They're looking at the phones, and children pick up on that. Yeah. So again, one of my tips to, I coach people about being better at work and better at home is just put your phone upstairs, right, in whichever drawer you want, and leave it there. And when you're talking to somebody, just give them the eye contact. Listen. One of the ways to show you're listening is sometimes to play back. So what I just heard you say was that, Jacey. Is that what you meant? Was my interpretation right? So I'm always doing almost the test close. I'm just checking before you get to the end and I go, I didn't really understand. Can you start again? All the time, did you mean that? And often you can ask a good question to help people even give you more information. What makes you say that? I love that phrase. What makes you say that? Well, that happened to me there, and that happened to me. That's interesting. When was that? Well, that was 20 years ago. Do you think an event 20 years ago should still impact on what you think about yourself now? Oh, well, that's a good point. Well, how could we change that? And then you start talking, yep. All the time it's reaffirming. And there's a great model called stimulus space response. And often somebody will say something. Now, if there's no space, it tends to be a reaction. Road rage is that. Stimulus, cut you up, right? If there's no space, guess what? All hell breaks out. The longer the space, the evidence is, the better the response. And it's not new. I remember elders in my life talking about, why don't you just sleep on it? That was stimulus space before I do the response. Count to 10. Count to 10.
Take a breath.
Yeah. I think the drafts box, right, is invented to create space. I know lots of people who've got an email and it's really got to them. And they've gone, bollocks, and sent it.
And regretted it immediately.
Absolutely. And it does some serious damage.
Yeah.
So often, if it's cathartic for typing it, fine. Save it in your drafts box. and then get somebody the following morning to say, I was thinking of sending this, what do you think? And they go, no, don't send that. And that's a stimulus-based response, and that's another way, for me, of training your brain to listen.
That's so interesting as
space.
well, because the written word is so different to the spoken word as well, isn't it? You know, things that you might write down as a leader would sound very different if they were communicated verbally. I mean, is that a good rule of thumb for leaders to have?
I think speaking is much better than typing. It takes me years to type, so I'd rather have a 5-minute conversation. I can pick up on your tonality. We can probably explore stuff that we wouldn't do on email, and I save myself lots of time. And time's important. You know, I want to be able to use my brain. I want to be able to interact with people. Sat at a computer, there's nothing worse for me than typing out. And often I'll say, can you give me a ring?
Yeah.
I think it's really important because communication is words, of course. But there's lots of studies about tonality and body language and being able to explore through questions.
And semantics as well. When what you read and what you perceive, we had this conversation before, is really different, I think, than... Because you get the visual cues as well when you have that eye-to-eye contact. Just a quick one. I'm really interested in what you're talking about with the space there. Yeah. I think it was an author called Susan David said that emotions are data, not directives. Yeah. So people behave the way they feel quite often. So when you feel a certain way and you want to unload both barrels, because that inner brain's saying, I'm being threatened here.
Every chip's going out to play.
But the cerebral part of your brain, the modern part that's saying, hang on a minute, let's be a bit logical here. I do this, I'm going to cut my nails off to spoil my face. What can we do in those moments to temperance our feelings?
Can I link the previous model of stimulus-based response to another one? The other one I use all the time, and this is about brain training now. These are models. I use models to absolutely get me to a point where if you read the chimp paradox, you've got the chimp, the computer, and the human. And if you program the computer, the chimp looks at the computer and decides whether to behave or not, depending upon whether or not there's a program or a model.
Yeah.
So what I program my brain to do is E plus R equals O. E is the event. I have no control over the event. The R is my chosen response. And I have 100% control over my chosen response to the event. And the equals O is the outcome. So if you want a good outcome, choose a great response, no matter what the event. And the best way to have a better response, a chosen response, is to give yourself some space. Because it's stimulus, event, space, response. The response. I see people whose train are cancelled, right? And it's all emotional reaction. And I sit there and I work with people and say, well, control the controllables, right? Number one, it's cancelled.
Yeah.
Secondly, could we work on a different chosen response? And I did a leadership program at Metro Bank, and we used to talk about this, our chosen responses, because customers sometimes can be unreasonable, irrational. Well, if we decided to, go back at them with both barrels, funny enough, we wouldn't have many customers. So we talked about chosen responses, and somebody said, "Well, what would you do when your train's cancelled?" I said, "I booked my next holiday." He went, "You what?" I went, "Well, I booked my next holiday. Same with the traffic jam." I sit there and go, "Right, where do I fancy going?" "Milan." "All right." And a girl came back to me and told me this story. And she went, "My boyfriend thinks you're great." I said, "I've never met your boyfriend." She went, "He used to meet me from the train and often it'd get cancelled. And before we did this Living Leader programme, I used to get off the train, I'd be in a really bad mood. To the point, he said, I'm not picking you up anymore. Every time you get off a train that's late or delayed, I get it in the neck. It's not my fault." So we did this pick your next holiday, and the train got cancelled. So she went, "Right, let's see if this works." So she says, "Right, I've been with my boyfriend. I want to go on a weekend away." So she started going, "Right, where do I fancy going?" She wanted to go to Nice. So she looks at EasyJet, and EasyJet were doing a 24-hour flash sale. So she looks at the flights for Nice, then she looks at a hotel, gets off the train. She went, "Week on Friday, we're off to Nice." And the boyfriend went, "You've changed." She went, "My train was late, I booked a holiday."
Oh, good.
But that's the chosen response bit. Yeah. So if people get a train delayed, right, choose your next holiday.
Excited.
What great advice.
Oh, good.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was I noticed that one of the times I saw you speak, and there was a room of people that you didn't know, that you actively went up and introduced yourself to as many people as possible. And it's one thing that I always coach people to do when they are nervous is you have to break the ice in those situations so that you don't experience those feelings of me versus the world. And that's very nerve-wracking. Is that something that you actively do?
Yeah, again, it's a learned skill. If you talk to people who teach networking, it's, I've got to walk into a room full of strangers. Right, I'm going to stand on my own and hope somebody comes to me. Or, I'm glad they're there. They're my mate.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to them. Well, if they're your mate, you know them already. You miss the opportunity to making wonderful new connections. And actually, you never know where those lead. And invariably, my experience is they lead to great friendships, great relationships, great business opportunities. And there's a couple of things there, my learning. Number one was from Dale Carnegie. And a guy called Ashley Latter who used to teach the Dale Carnegie stuff. And he just said, he gave you what he called the stack. He said, if you visualise a street name, and often the street name has a postcode, then if you visualise walking down that street and looking at a house, and then if you then look up to the chimney, and it's not a chimney pot, it's a work glove, and instead of having a TV aerial, it's an aeroplane. So it's street name, house, work glove, aeroplane. And he said, that's how you get to meet people. Where do you live? Right, which city you're from, the name, well, that's an interesting surname. Yours is double barrel. I'd love to know more about being double man. Yours is no man, that's interesting. You must have somebody. So straight away, you then start telling me about your history.
Yeah.
That's great. Then go, whereabouts, which street do you live in? Where's your nearest pub? Where's your nearest sports club? And then the work glove is, what do you do for a living? Tell me more. Right, what are the exciting bits about your job? And then the aeroplane is holidays and pastimes. So once you can visualise and repeat that stack, you walk into the room going, hi, I'm Chris, who are you? Where do you live? Where are you from? What work do you do? Right, where have you been on holiday lately?
Yeah.
Right, what are your hobbies and interests? Before you know it, people go, God, he's giving me a good listening to. I go, great.
And it's a great conversational framework as well, isn't it? Just to be able to have those in your back pocket for people who are anxious. And the other thing, I suppose, to take that one step further is, and I always say that then if you are in a situation where you have to speak in public in front of an audience, you've also got those friendly faces in the audience that you've already made a connection with.
And I think there's a really big tip there. Get to the venue early. Really early. Preferably earlier than anybody else. Reasons being, number one, you can check your slides, you can check the mic, you can walk the room. Part of that preparation is visualising where people are going to be. As people then start to join, because they're early, you've checked all your stuff. You can shake down to go, hi, I'm Chris, I'm the speaker today. What are you looking for from today? Where are you from? I'm Paul, I'm from Proactive Dispatch. This is what I'm here for. Great. Tell me more about Proactive Dispatch. Well, with this, that and the other. And then you meet other people. And as a result of that, you could sit there and go, I was only talking to Paul earlier about the importance of customer service. Paul, you told me a great story about winning the Halton and District Awards for customer experience. Congratulations. Anybody wants to know how to win awards in customer service, you've got somebody in the room. Because I'm always a great believer the answers are in the room. And all a speaker does is stimulate some thinking. So I'd always sit there and get them. And if it's a bigger conference for a corporate, go there when you know it's tea coffee time and listen to what's being said. Because that's when you feel the room, you feel the mood, you feel the, and if people are saying the same thing, you go, right, I'll refer to that. What's really important, I heard at lunch, I was there at coffee time, and you said this is a big issue for you. Let me talk about that for you. People go, oh wow. And I was in amongst them. Whereas some speakers run in, speak, run out. I go, I don't think that's great. I don't, because you might as well record a video and send me the video.
It's not great for your nerves either, because to be the person that arrives last, the main speaker, and then not have given yourself that mental time to break the ice or prepare in any way, I think always creates a barrier between you and your audience.
And Jamie and I can what coming, but one thing I learned from elite sport, never played it, but I've been in and around elite sports people like you and Kevin and people like that. And what I observed elite sports people do, really simply, is you always warm up. You then move into a phase of peak performance. You then warm down. And then you have some quality recovery time. That's my model, right? Get there early and warm up. So then I'm ready to go into peak performance. And I warm down. I always stay around. I always say, I'll stay around until the last person leaves. Because there might be somebody in the audience like me who wants to go and talk to a speaker. And if the speaker's going, oh, I will leave when the last person leaves. Because that means I'm serving you. Right? So that whole bit, then I'll go home and have a rest. And I'll repair and reflect and all of that stuff to make me better next time. So warm up, peak perform, warm down, quality recovery time. That's a really simple model that is there for sport, but it's there for speakers as well.
The beauty about sport, I think, is that it's unscripted. There's an element of bespoke to it. And when you go, I've seen speakers who talk about the ones that fly in, do what they're going to do, say what they're going to say, and then they go, they're like pull-string dolls. You're talking about plasticity. So actually, you're going to start to adapt a little bit of what you're saying based on what the audience is in the room. And when I've done a bit of acting in the past, I've really enjoyed doing the bits in the round where you can sense the emotions of people. That's where I used to get the buzz from. Yeah. And I think that is an advanced skill, because what some people might think is, well, if there's somebody in the room that's got this belief, or they start expecting A, B, C, and I've turned up to deliver X, Y, Z, start to doubt themselves that actually, what I'm going to say, is it going to be relevant? Yeah. That is the progression. And so I reckon you've taken us up to where I'm at the edge of my comfort zone listening to what you're saying. And my next question is, what's way outside my comfort zone is when you turn into a room, so let's say there's 100 people, and there might be from the local authority, there might be from a third sector or a charity, business, there might be from criminal justice system, education, great example. Yeah. All of them speak a slightly different language. They all work at a different pace. They all maybe perhaps want the same social outcomes. And I'm thinking about a real live scenario here. And you want to get them all to collaborate and come together, because you know that they've all got something to deliver into the big soup, which is going to affect social change. But the challenge is speaking a language that they're all going to hear and understand, to a point when they go, aha, I get what you're saying here. You know, for example, the word risk to a mic mates who we've had on here might mean the difference between losing a limb or losing your life. Yeah. The risk to a CEO might be losing your house, or somebody in financial services. A risk to a teacher in education is just getting out of your comfort zone and perhaps getting something wrong. So how do you really go above and beyond where you're speaking in tongues and communicating with multiple people from different life experiences?
I think asking rhetorical questions.
Right.
And when you're presenting, allowing people time to reflect what it means to them.
Right.
I think that's really important. So if you use the word risk, I go, just take a few moments to just, what does the word risk mean to you? What would be really helpful now is, why don't you chat to your neighbour and just find out what risk means to them and you, and see whether or not you could share something. So asking people to reflect, because I want them to take stuff away. I like to disrupt thinking. So I think using language that people understand. So number one, no jargon when you're speaking. I know a lot of people use jargon. I look at what's the lowest common denominator where everybody will understand what the word means. But I think then, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you in your environment? What would you do differently? But have a chat with the person next to you. And what that does is get two people perhaps from different departments, if it's the same company, or different organisations completely, to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And then go, you might want to carry this conversation on at coffee or lunch, or you might want to link in, you might want to meet next week, next month, next year sometime, and just suddenly build a network around you.
Love it.
So reflection, I think, is really, really important when you're a speaker. It gives you breathing space as well, so you can breathe and just do that. Just have 5 minutes, just reflect on what that means to you, talk to your neighbour. And I've always finished the presentations the same way. The last 2 slides are identical. Firstly, I have a process called 24/7/31. So I always ask the question, as a result of today, not necessarily my presentation, but as a result of today, what will you do differently in the next 24 hours? That's a gift to yourself. If it's a book I might have recommended, or if it's an action, just what will you do? The 7 is, you either lead a team or you're part of a team. So in the next 7 days, what will you share with your team as a result of today that will make your team that you either lead or part of be better? Then the 31 is you either lead or work for an organisation. So was it in the next 31 days, one idea that you're going to send to your boss that will make your organisation better? So 24 self, 7 days team, 31 organisation. And one CEO said, I've got 200 people in the room. If they all write to me with an idea, I've got 200 ideas. So I went, you should pay me for that. A lot of money. You have 200 ideas of how your people who are in the business think the business could be better. So it's personal responsibility. It's then team.
Yeah.
And then it's organisation. And my last slide is a quote from Seneca. Seneca was accused of being lucky. Seneca didn't like being accused of being lucky. He said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So when you talk about comfort zones and stuff like that, whilst I go in the zone to perform, I choose my uncomfortable zones to go and perform in, to learn, to challenge myself. And that is about an opportunity to test myself in unfamiliar environments. That means I know the way to do that is to prepare the best I can, to get there really, to listen to people. So I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I go searching uncomfortable places to present, and that can be big audiences, little audiences, different topics and presentations, but it's all down with the preparation.
It's funny, even some of the things we talk about in the communication work that we do is even Dale Carnegie in the late 1800s was saying only the prepared speaker deserves to feel confident. And I just think it's quite refreshing to know that, you know, to look at you, you'd seem like you could just speak, that it was the easiest thing in the world, but that there is so much work that goes into all those talks that you give and all of those speeches that you've given. I think that might be comforting to some people.
I think it's just be comfortable with what you know is good for you, good material for you to share. So if you take the word, you know, coaching, you Google coaching models, you'd be there all day just reading them. My preferred coaching model is from John Whitmore, and it's the GROW model. And it's really simple to communicate. The G is, let's agree the goal. So what is it you want to achieve, Jacey? Right, what's your goal? I want to earn that much money. I want that job. Right, okay. The R then stands for what's the reality of where you are now? And the difference between what you want to be and where you are now is the performance gap. And then you go, right. The O is, well, what options have you got, Jacey, to close the performance gap? And you go, well, I could do that, that. Great. Which one do you think is best for you? And then the W is the will. And I'd ask you questions, when are you going to start? What are you going to do? How will you overcome, you know, any difficulties or moments where you might lack in confidence? So I just love the GROW model. Somebody might like Pesos or somebody might like Steer. That's great. But I like GROW. Therefore, I'm going to talk about GROW.
Do you ever get nervous at all?
Every time. Every time. I'm always going through, I visualise an awful lot. I go back to sport.
Such a powerful tool.
Visualise, right? And I visualise where I'm going to be on the stage, and sometimes I'll put a little tape.
I feel like you've done one of my courses. It's one of the things that I teach people to do and encourage them is to visualise the environment they're going to be in, because otherwise you underestimate that environment and suddenly all those things that you've rehearsed at home on a laptop in the kitchen have to be translated into a very different environment, and often it can take a while for the brain to engage and kick in. For some people that never happens and it can create a bit of a public speaker crisis and they'll never want to do it again. Whereas for others, you know, that process actually happens because they've done that preparation at home, the right preparation.
And it's scenario A, scenario B, scenario C. It's fascinating. I was with an organisation this week and they talked about how they were very good at analysing things when it went wrong. I went, you know, in the medical term, you call it a post-mortem. They went, yeah. I said, how do you find the time for post-mortems? Oh, well, when it's gone wrong, we always find the time. I said, do you not think it'd be helpful if you had a pre-mortem? So at the start, you worked out what could go wrong first, right? Not wait for it to go wrong. So it's prevention versus cure. And all that time is, how good do you want your preparation to be? And you should look at scenarios. There's a saying that says, every plan disintegrates on the first point of contact. Or Mike Tyson, everybody thinks they're hard until you get punched on the nose, right? So it is about, what do you want it to be? What if you're running late? What if your slides don't work? I did a presentation 2 weeks ago in Somerset, and there was a power cut at Somerset Cricket Club, just as I was due to stand. And I just carried on. Somebody said, you don't have any slides? I went, but I'd prepared. The slides weren't me. They were there to help those people who were visual in the audience. Don't mean I don't know my story, right? They're there as an aid, not a crutch type stuff. So I think you're right. I think it is about visualisation. Visualise the room, visualise the people. Smile at people, you get a smile back. That boosts your confidence straight away. Keep it simple. If you've got an hour, you'd sit there and go, right, introduce yourself. Do it in 3 15-minute blocks. So you only need to know 4 things maximum. And one of them is 24/7/31, speak to your neighbour. So if you can remember 4 things, you don't need... And they're the little tips I'd give people who are speaking, which is just make sure that you just go, right, that what are the 4 things, my 4 key messages. And if you want to write them on your hand, write them on your hand. So 4 key messages. But what your brain will do is if you've practiced the content behind those 4 key headlines, the picture, the 55 words,
the headline,
what your brain will do is recall it for you. If you've not done the prep, it won't. So people talk about memory. I talk about recall. There's a difference. Everything's in our memory.
Yep.
The real skill is how do you recall it, and therefore what are your anchors, what are your triggers? How do you have methodologies for creating stuff? So I've memorised my 14 models. I can do situational leadership. I can do grow model. It's there. So I've trained my computer to go back to Chimp Paradox. That when somebody says something, I'll just draw that for you.
Wow.
But it's a learned skill.
Sure.
It's a learned skill.
Put the work in. I imagine the gratitude for the person that's invited you to come and speak when power cut goes and they think that's it, my event's ruined, and then you bring it back to life because you're prepared. Like, they must look at you in a completely different light. That shows the depth of your preparation, going back to Seneca. If I may, I'm just intrigued because I'm really poor at preparing. Like, I just think, in most things in life, the job I'd be worst at would be something like an accountant. That's black and white, framework, structure. That's where I have to work hard. What tips might you give us to have a think about in how to use those 10 hours per 1 hour of preparation?
First of all, can I give you some feedback in your language there?
I love this.
You just said, I'm really poor at preparing. Well, number one, if you're telling yourself you're poor at preparing, what your brain will process is, I'll do what he's asked me to do.
Your own worst enemy.
Well, that's what he said. I'm really poor at preparing, right? Yeah. So if you say, I'd like to be better at preparing, what your brain processes is better. And that's language.
Of course.
So I talk to a lot of people about the language they use on themselves. It's almost defeatist. Now, how are you? Not bad, thanks. Not bad. Come on. Right? You woke up this morning. If your partner and your children are well, that's got to be better than not bad, thanks. Right? Fantastic. Great. Wonderful. Glad to be alive. The sun's shining. I'm in Leeds. I'm at Headingley. It's an iconic stadium for cricket and football. Tell you what, not bad, thanks. What does your brain process?
It's a very British thing, that, though, isn't it, to be more pessimistic? But you are the most positive person I think I've ever met. And you always say, I'm great, thanks.
Great, thank you. Right? But you sit there and go, I want to be better. So number one, you decide I'll be better.
Yeah.
And I think we're all good at almost everything we do. So why don't we work from a place of strength? A lot of people go, I'm crap at this and I can't do that. I can't. My daughter used to say can't. What she really meant was I don't want to. So we started to explore what can't meant. And then we broke it down. So I think we build from strengths. And then go, even if you wanted to go into the marginal gains, instead of trying to do one thing 100% better, what if we trained our brains to do 100 things 1% better?
Sure, yeah.
Because I think we can. We can do lots of things 1% better. And Frank Dick I think he's the very best at this. Frank Dick used to coach the UK athletics teams. And he talks about a +1 strategy. Can you do something better tomorrow than you did today? Just by one little thing. Imagine if you did that every day for a year.
Yeah.
And that goes that spaced repetition and rehearsal and practice. Just be better. I remember I chaired an organisation on health. I remember having a conversation with somebody about how do you break things down into bite-sized chunks, because I think that's how you can really start building your preparation. I remember having a conversation with somebody who says, I'm trying to lose weight and I don't know how to. I said, I'll come to your house tomorrow and I'll help. And I turned up and I said, come on, let's go for a walk. And we walked to the first lamppost on her road. I said, congratulations, go back now. She was like, yeah. I said, when was the last time you did that? She said, I've not done it for a while. I said, good, we're due to a personal best today. And that's the Frank Dick bit, it was a personal best +1 strategy. So I'll see you tomorrow same time. She said, okay. I said, right, come on. We walked to the second lamppost on the street and then walked back. And we debriefed it. We walked back. How was it? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, good. Third day, come on, let's go for a walk. We walked to the third lamppost. And each day I just said, congratulations. That's a new personal best. It's a new personal best. It's a new personal best. Got there on day 4. She went, I beat you. I went, what? I got up early this morning. I went to the 4th lamppost. I said, congratulations. You did that all by yourself. That's a new personal best. And it's a chosen response. Do you want to do the 5th one with me now, or should we come back tomorrow? She went, no, let's do the 5th. Walk back. Eventually that person walks around the block, walks fast to the first lamppost and walks steadily around the block, fast to the second, all the time personal pepper. That same person phoned me up 18 months later from Amsterdam, and I've just done the Amsterdam half marathon.
Wow.
If I'd have gone to her on that first day and said, right, I want you to run a half marathon in Amsterdam now. So I went, let's look at the future, break it down to today and then build it up in bite-sized chunks.
Brilliant.
And give yourself a round of applause every time you hit a personal best. Because that's how you build your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-belief. That's why I've gone from well-read to being confident. Whether I'm any good or not, that's for other people to decide. But I'm confident that when I present, I'm all right with me. Because I put the prep in. And I know my models. And I read the audience. And it's a process. It's a learned skill.
Wow, what an amazing place.
Both looking at each other, we don't know where to go now, do we?
It's absolutely, I mean, it's not often that we're lost for words, but I kind of, and I suppose one of my only few remaining questions is, what is the future for Chris Brindley and how important is communication in the execution of that plan?
There's a book by Trevor Waldock, and it's called To Plant a Walnut Tree. And he opens up with a question. He says, what comes after leadership? That's a brilliant question. And I've led organisations. And I'm proud of what I've done. But it's a question that really got me thinking. What comes after leadership? Because I've always tried to do something different in my life. I just didn't want to be the same person. You know, I started to work for myself when I had a comfortable role, and I went into sport when I'd never played professional sport, and I'm proud of, you know, the achievements there. And he gives you the answer, and the answer's eldership. And I went, wow. And as I'm approaching my last years of my life, I am. I mean, that's the reality. Memento Mori says, you know, we all die. So actually I'm moving from leadership now into spending a bit more time reflecting upon eldership and trying to get some other elders around to how can we help others. You know, I came from a working class background. My father walked out when I was 3 months old. We didn't have any money. I wasn't any good at school. I was born in July. I'm 5'5", right? But apparently there's loads of studies that says I shouldn't be here. Because, well, if you're born then, if you do that. And the reality is I just believe in me. And I've had some great people around me, some great bosses, some great coaches, some great mentors. And what next for me is about spending more time just sharing this stuff, and that's why I wanted to be here today. I'm hugely privileged and humble that you've invited me, but it is an opportunity to share lessons and learning with others. And if one person listens to this, does something, I go back to my old school and my presentation's entitled Dreams Are Free, because they are. And if you dream and then you act on the dream, acting on verb full enough, that's the journey to make them come true. So I think what's next for me is I love sharing, I love coaching, I love being around people. And I just want God to give me the opportunity to continue to do that for many, many years to come.
And what about teaching? So you mentioned that. Have you got books, resources that you could put? I mean, you speak in front of rooms, which is one part of it, but now in a digital world, is there a resource that you could author, narrate, create?
Yeah, I haven't got the attention span, I don't think, to write a book, which means there'll be a load of ghostwriters writing it. It's not on my list to write a book, full enough. And that might just be me being selfish. So I think you've given me a
A challenge.
a reflection point. A reflection
I love that, a reflection point.
Well, the win, that's how you laugh.
because I get asked a lot. Would you write a book? And
I'd buy it, mate. That's why I'm asking.
I know, me too.
It's gold, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, just the frameworks, it just helps so much to build that map.
But they're not, I suppose part of it is they're not mine. They're readily available to anybody. All I've done is just, it's a bit like a recipe. It's still eggs, cheese, butter, milk, right? But what I do with it is what I do. But so I usually sit there and go, I'm not that creative that I've got lots of original models. What I am good at is thinking, how might I apply that model in that situation? Yeah. And I don't know if anybody would want to buy a book on that, really.
I would.
I definitely would. Definitely would. So you heard it here first. Maybe there'll be a book next. Who knows? The Chris Brindley Bible, which I think I definitely would be the first in line to buy that. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us on this week's podcast.
Brilliant.
Thank you to all of you for joining our Pipe Up podcast. If you like our podcast, then you can like and subscribe, or you can follow us on socials for information about when the next ones will be.